Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you bet your life on their loyalty? I did. And within seconds, that trust was shattered to pieces. Life was a flawless script until I walked into a scene that ripped it apart. My worst nightmare. The kind that turns your stomach and makes you question every choice you've ever made. Now imagine you choose revenge. A carefully planned revenge that was meant to heal, but instead led to irreversible chaos. Trust me, once you cross a certain line, salvation is not guaranteed. It requires everything you have. My name is Thomas Ford, age 42, sitting alone in this polished corner office, looking out over the dazzling Manhattan skyline, wondering how it all became so empty. But I wasn't always like this. Allow me to take you back to a moment, a beautiful lie. Precisely 3 days before my 42nd birthday. Picture this clearly, because I need you to understand how fragile perfection truly is. My apartment on Park Avenue gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers. Classical music softly filled the background, subtle yet sophisticated, everything exactly how Julia loved it. My wife, Julia, the dazzlingly brilliant woman who'd captured my heart 15 years ago and had held it ever since. I watched her glide across the marble floors, elegant, poised, effortlessly enchanting. Her laughter danced around the room as she arranged flowers, her fingertips gentle as they brushed over petals. "Thomas," she called softly, eyes sparkling, a smile that promised eternity. "Make sure you're home on time Friday. I've planned something special." "You know I wouldn't miss it," I said, smiling back at her, completely oblivious to how swiftly my life was about to crumble. Julia was my sanctuary, my calm amidst the stormy seas of finance and cutthroat corporate rivalry. My younger brother, David, lived with us too, at my insistence. Family looks after family. Our father had always preached. David was struggling through his mid-30s, directionless, but charming, disarming in his boyish ways. We had always been close, bound by an unspoken bond forged through shared childhood hardships. "Tom," David's voice broke my reverie. He came bounding down the stairs, tossing his keys on the table carelessly. "Going out. See you later." "Be careful," I muttered reflexively. Parental habit, overriding brotherly affection. Julia laughed softly. "Always the protector," she teased, stepping into my embrace, her perfume wrapped around me, familiar, comforting. I closed my eyes, breathing her in deeply, blind to the danger lurking just beneath the surface. This was my life, a perfect illusion, crafted from the most exquisite lies, a blissful ignorance masking treacherous truths. And if I'd known what would unfold in mere days, perhaps I'd have savored that lie a little longer. But illusions are fragile. My birthday arrived like a storm gathering on the horizon, silent and ominous. I remember thinking how odd it was when my afternoon meeting ended abruptly. How peculiar that my assistant cancelled all my appointments with a mysterious smile. Suspicion lingered briefly, then dissipated beneath naive anticipation. I left the office early, eager to surprise Julia. Unaware I was stepping into the cruelest twist fate could orchestrate, I entered our home, a sense of excitement fizzing beneath my skin. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. A strange, inexplicable chill crept along my spine. "Julia, David," I called softly. No response. As I climbed the stairs, my heart started pounding inexplicably faster. Every step echoed louder. each breath strained in my chest. I approached David's room, the door ajar slightly, voices hushed inside. I froze as my gaze fell through the crack. An image searing itself permanently into my memory, Julia. My Julia, wrapped tightly in my brother David's embrace, her hand caressing his face tenderly as their foreheads touched intimately. The betrayal illuminated in brutal clarity. Time slowed, my heartbeat deafening. Rage, hot and bitter, surged violently through my veins. My perfect illusion shattered, and in its place, darkness blossomed, a darkness that would soon consume everything I loved, everything I was. How far would you go when everything you believed turned out to be a lie? Have you ever felt pain so intense it numbs everything else, your logic, your compassion, even your humanity? As I stood frozen at the doorway, my world twisted into a grotesque parody of everything I'd built. The image of Julia, my wife, the woman I'd trusted above all else, embracing my brother David, carved itself viciously into my memory. My heartbeat thundered so violently in my chest, it drowned out their quiet whispers. Rage boiled within me, fierce and unstoppable. I slammed the door open violently, the wood splintering beneath my strength. They spun toward me, panic flashing vividly across their faces. "Thomas?" Julia gasped, pulling back from David. The color drained rapidly from her delicate features, eyes wide, filled with terror. David's posture stiffened defensively, guilt lining every feature, but his expression quickly hardened into something challenging, defiant. "How long?" My voice cracked, edged with betrayal, and an agony so profound it strangled me. Julia opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came. David, however, found his words first, stepping forward slightly, as if daring me to strike him. "It's not what you think." "Oh, it's exactly what I think." My words erupted violently, shaking the walls around us. "I trusted you, both of you." Julia finally managed to find her voice, trembling, pleading. "Thomas, please, let's sit down and—" "Sit down!" I laughed bitterly, incredulously, staring at her as though seeing her clearly for the very first time. "You want to talk now?" "Julia?" After all the lies, she flinched visibly at my tone, but instead of shame, something darker flickered behind her eyes, a brief defiance that burned brighter than remorse. My heart splintered further. Was this the woman I'd loved? Was this the same gentle creature whose laughter once filled my life with meaning? I stepped closer, voice dropping dangerously low. "Tell me, Julia, how long have you been sleeping with my brother?" She hesitated, then answered quietly, almost a whisper. 6 months. My knees nearly buckled beneath the weight of her admission. 6 months of deceit. 6 months of silent betrayal. Rage overtook reason completely. I lunged at David, fists connecting brutally. He staggered backward, crashing against a bookshelf. Books scattered across the floor in chaos. "Stop it!" Julia screamed, but made no move to intervene. Standing frozen in shock, David recovered swiftly, pushing back, striking my jaw with shocking force. Pain exploded across my face, but I welcomed it, needed it, as if physical agony could drown out the deeper wound tearing my soul apart. We grappled violently, smashing against furniture, the room spinning into chaos. As we stumbled apart, breathing heavily, Julia's silence resonated louder than our shouts ever could. Her stillness spoke volumes. She had already chosen her side, and it wasn't mine. I turned my back on them, staggering out of the room, vision blurred from rage, pain, and humiliation. Downstairs, alone in the shattered illusion of my perfect home, I felt my entire being tremble uncontrollably, collapsing into a chair, my face buried in shaking hands. I grappled desperately with the realization there would be no forgiveness, no reconciliation, no turning back from this point. A different man rose from the ashes of that betrayal colder. Ruthless, determined to make them feel every ounce of pain they'd inflicted upon me. That night, something inside me fractured irreparably, giving birth to a darkness I'd never known existed within. This wasn't just betrayal. It was war, and I would ensure they both understood exactly how merciless war could become. How far would you go to reclaim your pride, your dignity, your very self? Because from that moment forward, nothing else mattered. Nothing else existed but the fierce hunger for justice, the bitter thirst for revenge. I locked myself away in my study that night, alone, surrounded by silence. The echoes of their betrayal still ripped through my mind relentlessly. I felt the foundations of my world crumble, replaced by an emptiness so profound it left me breathless for hours. I paced the polished hardwood floor. Each step triggered memories, moments I'd ignored, subtle clues hidden beneath a veil of trust. The late nights Julia claimed to spend with friends, David's sudden shifts in behavior. Secret phone calls abruptly ended when I entered the room. How could I have been so blind? Rage burned cold, focused now, sharper than ever. I realized I could either let this betrayal consume me or use the pain as fuel. An idea formed clearly. Revenge, precise and devastating. Delivered in a language they understood, best power and money. Sitting at my desk, my fingers flew across the keyboard. Being the CEO of one of New York's leading banks had granted me privileges and access few could dream of. Now, I planned to weaponize those privileges. I methodically searched through records every bank account, investment portfolio, financial transaction Julia and David had conducted. Soon enough, patterns began emerging. Julia, always proud and ambitious, had quietly hidden substantial assets offshore. David, charming yet reckless, had suspicious investments in businesses with questionable reputations. They'd been careful, but not careful enough. As dawn approached, I leaned back, exhausted but resolute. My heart still ached, but a grim satisfaction filled me. I now had the ammunition needed to dismantle their lives as they'd destroyed mine. In my hand rested the power to expose every dark secret they concealed. I knew exactly what needed to be done. Their world would crumble piece by piece, just as mine had. They would pay dearly not merely in money or reputation, but in the currency of humiliation and regret. Standing up, I walked to the large window, watching as sunrise broke over the city. Its light felt harsh, indifferent. I glanced at my reflection, barely recognizing the man staring back. Pain and anger had reshaped me into someone colder, harsher. But this version of me knew precisely what it wanted. This was no longer about betrayal or heartbreak. It was about justice, my justice. The reckoning had begun. In the days following my discovery, I slipped quietly into the shadows, my purpose clear, my intent unyielding. I became methodical, relentless. First, I discreetly gathered every crucial document and financial trail linking Julia and David to hidden assets and questionable investments. With every revelation, their betrayal cut deeper, sharpening my resolve. I moved carefully, calling in discreet favors from trusted contacts in finance and media men and women who owed me more than loyalty. They asked no questions, sensing urgency and severity in my voice. Within days, evidence piled up, undeniable and damning, offshore accounts under Julia's name, hidden transactions funding David's reckless lifestyle, each carefully documented and irrefutable. One evening, I arranged to meet privately with Marcus Rivera, a prominent financial journalist known for his unforgiving expos. Seated quietly in an isolated corner of a dimly lit downtown cafe, I handed him the carefully prepared file. Marcus eyed me warily, recognizing instantly the weight of what I was offering. "Thomas," Marcus said, quietly, voice edged with caution. "Are you certain you want to do this? Once this goes public, there's no turning back." I met his gaze calmly, my voice steady and cold. "I have never been more certain about anything." Marcus nodded solemnly, sensing my determination. He closed the file gently. "Consider it done." Within 2 days, the media storm hit hard. Headlines exploded with sensational revelations. Elite socialite, Julia Ford, and brother-in-law embroiled in secret financial scandal. Photos of Julia and David splashed across newspapers and online media, their confident smiles now mocking masks of deceit. Julia called repeatedly, panic edging her voice, her desperation evident in frantic voicemails. "Thomas, please, answer me. We need to talk." I deleted each message without hesitation. David tried to confront me, showing up at my office. Security promptly escorted him out. Humiliated, broken, watching from the security monitors, satisfaction briefly mingled with a fleeting pang of regret. But any sympathy vanished immediately, replaced by cold resolve. My phone buzzed incessantly with calls and messages from mutual acquaintances. Shocked, curious, judgmental, I ignored them all. Embracing solitude, revenge had become my only companion. Yet, despite my calculated actions, sleep eluded me. Alone in the dark silence of my apartment, shadows whispered relentlessly, reminding me that something inside me had died alongside trust. I knew there was no turning back. The wheels were set in motion, and my vengeance had only just begun. Their pain was a balm to my wounded pride, yet deep within my fractured soul. A quiet voice stirred, warning me of a dark path with no exit. But I silenced it swiftly. I was no longer the man who forgave, who compromised, who loved unconditionally. Now, I had become the shadow itself. I watched calmly as their world unraveled. Media coverage intensified, each scandalous headline pushing Julia and David deeper into disgrace. Friends and colleagues quickly abandoned them. Social circles, once filled with laughter and smiles, turned silent and cold. Then, Julia finally confronted me. Late one evening, the sharp click of heels against marble echoed softly through my apartment hallway. Standing in the dim glow of the doorway, Julia looked like a shadow of herself. Her once confident eyes were now red-rimmed, tired, desperate. "Thomas," she spoke softly, her voice shaking. "Is this really how it ends?" I felt nothing but bitter contempt as I stared at her. "You ended this the moment you betrayed me." She took a hesitant step forward. Please, Thomas, haven't you done enough? Enough? I laughed, hollow and sharp. Did you consider whether you'd done enough, as you lied to my face every night for 6 months? She flinched, but recovered swiftly, defiance igniting briefly in her eyes. You left me alone, Thomas emotionally abandoned. David was there. My anger flared violently, sharp and immediate. Don't you dare justify this, I growled through gritted teeth. I gave you everything, my trust, my love, my life. She stood silent for a moment, vulnerability and resentment warring visibly in her expression. Her voice trembled when she finally spoke. You're destroying us. No, I corrected her coldly, stepping closer until our faces were mere inches apart. You destroyed us. I'm merely showing the world who you truly are. Her composure finally broke. Tears streamed down her face, smearing carefully applied makeup. What do you want? Thomas, an apology? I'll give you one. I'm sorry. Truly sorry. Sorry won't fix this. Julia, I cut her off sharply. It won't erase what you've done. Her hands clenched tightly at her sides. What then? Do you want me broken and ruined? I want justice, I replied, voice steady and icy. I want you to feel exactly what you've made me feel. Betrayed, humiliated, worthless. She stared at me, comprehension dawning slowly across her features. You've changed, she whispered bitterly. You're not the man I married. No, I admitted coldly, stepping back to create distance. That man died the day he found you in David's arms. She lowered her eyes, retreating slowly toward the doorway. Her voice came quietly, defeated yet sharp. A final lash. I hope revenge is worth everything you've lost. Then she left, closing the door softly behind her, leaving only echoes of her presence. Standing alone in the stark silence, I felt no triumph, only an ache deeper than I'd expected. Her words lingered uncomfortably, igniting quiet doubts I swiftly tried to silence. Was revenge truly worth this hollow victory? Yet, I pushed those doubts aside, unwilling to accept weakness. David and Julia made their choice long ago. Now, they would pay the price. I had come too far to stop. Their ruin had become my redemption, and there was no turning back. 2 nights later, a storm erupted over Manhattan violent. Relentless rain battering the glass windows. Echoing my restless anxiety, I sat alone in my darkened apartment, the muted television casting flickering shadows across empty walls. Then my phone vibrated sharply, startling me from restless thoughts. I stared briefly at the screen, an unknown number. I hesitated, but answered it. Hello. Thomas? A familiar voice spoke, strained and trembling. It was Julia. Her voice cracked, filled with fear. I need you. Please come quickly. Something terrible happened. My pulse quickened. Julia, what's wrong? Please, Thomas David. There's been an accident. I don't know what to do. Her voice broke into sobs. Panic seized me. Whatever had happened, it was serious. I grabbed my coat, barely breathing, as I rushed through pouring rain towards Julia's penthouse apartment. The same building where I'd revealed their betrayal. The place of my deepest wounds. Minutes later, standing in Julia's living room, dread filled my veins like ice. The lavish furnishings were overturned. Shattered glass littered the floor. Julia stood trembling near the open balcony door, face pale, mascara smudged with tears. She pointed weakly to the balcony, barely whispering, It happened so fast. I approached the edge, heart hammering painfully, looking down. My breath caught in horror. David's broken body lay sprawled lifelessly on the pavement, far below, emergency lights flashing silently through the rain, casting eerie reflections on the wet streets. "What did you do?" My voice trembled, barely audible above the storm. She shook her head rapidly, tears streaming uncontrollably. We argued. Everything was collapsing. David blamed me. It was an accident. "I swear, Thomas." He stumbled and I turned sharply, fury blazing, despite shock and grief. "You pushed him." "No," she cried desperately, voice breaking. "I never meant for this to happen. It just got out of control." I stared hard at Julia, trying to read sincerity in her devastated expression, feeling disgusted and broken. My revenge had intended ruin, not death. My stomach twisted violently, guilt and panic seeping in through cracks I hadn't acknowledged existed. Police sirens pierced the silence abruptly, growing louder by the second. Soon they'd be here, demanding answers neither of us could adequately give. Julia reached out desperately, grasping my sleeve. "Thomas, please help me tell them it was an accident. You know me. Please." I stepped back, pulling away sharply, revolted. "I don't know you at all," I whispered coldly. In that moment, clarity struck mercilessly. My carefully planned revenge had escalated beyond control, leaving death and ruin in its wake. David, my own blood dead because of choices I'd made. Officers arrived swiftly, their voices authoritative, questions sharp and relentless. I watched numbly as they handcuffed Julia, her sobbing pleas echoing weakly down the hallway. As they led her away, she turned one last broken glance toward me. But I offered no comfort, no solace. Left, standing alone amid chaos, a stark realization tore into my chest. Revenge had exacted a cost far higher than I'd imagined. My brother lay dead below, my wife in police custody, and me, the architect of our ruin, stood utterly alone. How had my pursuit of justice brought only greater injustice? The room darkened around me, reality crushing heavily. The storm outside raged harder, echoing the turmoil inside me. I sank slowly to my knees amidst the shattered remains of a life I'd intentionally destroyed, finally understanding the cruelest truth of all in vengeance. No one truly wins. Only ashes remain. Days turned into a blurred sequence of numbness. I moved mechanically through the motions of daily life, haunted by images of David's lifeless body and Julia's terrified, pleading face. I was drowning, each breath heavier than the last, the weight of guilt suffocating me. Headlines branded our tragedy in cold. Impersonal text, family scandal ends in tragedy. Banking CEO linked to fatal accident investigation. People I'd known for decades distanced themselves overnight. My own staff eyed me warily, whispering when they thought I couldn't hear. Soon, detectives came knocking, their questions clinical and relentless. Each inquiry pierced deeper into my carefully concealed shame, exposing raw wounds I was desperate to hide. Sitting alone in the empty, sterile interrogation room, Detective Martinez, a stoic, older investigator, stared sharply into my eyes. "Mr. Hafford, let's be clear," Martinez stated firmly. Leaning forward, "We have evidence that your actions indirectly contributed to your brother's death." I looked away, struggling to maintain composure. I never wanted this. Yes, I exposed their secrets, but I never wanted anyone hurt. Martinez leaned closer, voice dropping dangerously. Yet someone is dead. Someone you swore you'd protect. My heart shattered again at those words. David, the brother I'd vowed to always shield, was now gone, forever destroyed indirectly by my own hand. Returning home later, I walked through the silent apartment, shadows of former happiness mocking me. Every photograph of David, every shared memory, stabbed like sharp glass fragments. I grabbed a picture from the mantel, a joyful moment frozen forever. David laughing brightly at some forgotten joke. My vision blurred, tears burning silently down my face. "I'm sorry," I whispered hoarsely. "I never meant for any of this to happen." Yet apologies couldn't bring David back. Apologies couldn't undo my calculated cruelty, nor the irreparable damage my vengeance had caused. Weeks passed in suffocating solitude. I avoided public places, shrinking from accusing stares. Messages and calls piled up unanswered. Friends, family, even casual acquaintances now shunned me, my name synonymous with scandal and ruin. One rainy afternoon, sitting alone by David's grave, I silently confronted harsh truths. Revenge had poisoned my soul, robbing me of humanity and compassion. Every choice I'd made from anger had led directly here, to this quiet cemetery, buried beneath insurmountable regret. A soft step interrupted my despair. Glancing up, I found David's childhood friend, Paul, quietly placing flowers beside me. For a long moment, he said nothing, sharing my heavy silence. Finally, Paul spoke softly, gently. "Thomas, David loved you. He made terrible mistakes, but he always respected you. He wouldn't want this pain and isolation." I stared blankly into rain-soaked grass, voice barely audible. "But I'm responsible." Paul placed a steady hand on my shoulder, a small, compassionate gesture that nearly broke me entirely. "Maybe you are," he admitted quietly, "but living like this won't bring him back. Perhaps the only way forward is to accept responsibility and seek redemption." Redemption? The word echoed profoundly within me. Unfamiliar, yet oddly comforting. Could someone like me, a man who'd orchestrated ruin, ever truly redeem himself? Later that night, I sat alone in my dim apartment, staring at the city skyline, lights blurred through rain-slicked glass. My phone buzzed quietly, my attorney's number illuminated on screen. The call I had dreaded yet anticipated had finally come. Legal actions were beginning. I would have to face accountability for everything I'd set in motion. I answered quietly, accepting the consequences looming over me. The path forward was harsh, uncertain, but necessary. As I hung up, realization settled deeply inside me. The only path out of this torment was honesty, accountability, and acceptance of the damage I had caused. I had sought revenge, believing justice meant equal pain. But true justice required facing the hardest truth, that my greatest enemy wasn't Julia or David. It was me. From the darkness of my guilt emerged a fragile clarity, one last chance to reclaim what remained of my humanity. For David, for myself, and for the first time since this nightmare began. I breathed deeply, feeling the faintest trace of hope through my grief. The courtroom was packed, murmurs of judgment and accusation humming quietly through the crowded rows. I sat rigidly beside my attorney, Amanda Reed, her calm confidence contrasting sharply with my inward turmoil. My heart pounded relentlessly as the judge entered. Every movement around me magnified in a surreal clarity. Judge Eleanor Mitchell took her seat, gaze stern and unreadable. I felt suffocated beneath the weight of stares from colleagues, neighbors, and journalists. Friends turned foes. Whispers of betrayal and accusations echoed painfully around me. "Mr. Ford," Judge Mitchell's voice was clear, decisive. "Your actions, though indirect, undeniably set forth a sequence of tragic events resulting in your brother's death. Have you anything to say before sentencing silence fell?" Thick and oppressive, Amanda nudged me gently. I rose slowly, hands trembling subtly, taking a deep breath. "Your Honor," I spoke carefully, voice barely steady, "I accept full responsibility for the actions I've taken and the consequences they've caused. My intent was never to harm anyone physically, but I allowed anger and betrayal to cloud my judgment." My voice cracked slightly, emotion briefly breaking through my composed facade. I realize now how deeply wrong I was. The courtroom remained still, a tense quiet filling every corner, eyes fixed sharply upon me, skeptical yet intrigued. I've lost far more than my reputation and status. I've lost family, trust, dignity, things money can't replace. My voice softened, heavy with raw honesty. David deserved better from me. I failed him as a brother and protector, and I accept whatever consequence you deem appropriate. As I sat down, the room's atmosphere shifted subtly from cold judgment to cautious contemplation. Amanda gave my shoulder a gentle, reassuring squeeze. The judge deliberated briefly before her voice echoed authoritatively, carrying unmistakable finality. "Mr. Ford, considering your genuine remorse, cooperation during investigations, and lack of criminal history, I sentence you to 2 years, suspended probation, and mandatory community service." However, she paused significantly, locking eyes with me. "The community's judgment may be harsher than mine." Relief washed briefly through me, tempered immediately by sobering reality. Legally free, yet morally imprisoned, a punishment far heavier than physical confinement. As I stepped outside, cameras flashed aggressively, reporters shouting questions I barely heard. Hostile glances pierced from every angle. Familiar faces looked away in contempt or pity, the community's verdict unequivocal. Amanda shielded me through the chaos, whispering gently, "You did the right thing. Healing begins with accountability." Late that evening, alone at home, I stared at my reflection in the window, unrecognizable, haunted, forever changed. My pride dismantled, identity stripped bare, yet beneath shame stirred faint hope. I understood clearly I could never erase past mistakes, only confront them openly. Rebuilding something honest from broken pieces. Picking up my phone, I dialed Paul's number, determined and clear. When he answered softly, I spoke calmly, sincerely. "I want to start the community service immediately. I want to make amends, no matter how difficult." Paul paused, warmth seeping cautiously into his voice. "It won't be easy, Thomas, but I'm glad you're ready." As I ended the call, heaviness lifted incrementally from my chest. Redemption wouldn't come quickly or painlessly, but perhaps through earnest effort and humility. I could reclaim pieces of the humanity I'd lost. This judgment wasn't the end, but a painful, necessary beginning. One I'd finally found the courage to face. In the months following the court ruling, I dedicated myself fully to community service, repairing local shelters, serving meals to those less fortunate, quietly doing my penance away from public view. Each task was a small, silent step toward rebuilding something within me. Initially, resentment and suspicion surrounded me. Volunteers whispered quietly, eyes filled with judgment. Distrust, palpable in their cautious glances. Yet, I persisted, driven by genuine humility, accepting their skepticism as justified punishment. Gradually, the whispers softened. Quiet mistrust gave way to cautious acceptance, eventually turning into mutual respect. My own wounds slowly began to heal as I helped others mend theirs. Each day brought subtle relief, a gentle reassurance that redemption, though painful, was possible. One cold evening, as I prepared meals at a homeless shelter, Paul appeared quietly beside me, observing me thoughtfully. "How are you holding up, Thomas?" he asked gently. I paused, looking carefully into his eyes. "It's a slow process," I admitted honestly. "But for the first time, I feel I'm doing something truly right." He nodded, smiling faintly. "David would have wanted this, for you to find peace again." At David's name, familiar pain flickered. Softer now. Bearable. "I miss him terribly," I murmured, voice thickening slightly. "But I finally understand revenge heals nothing. It only destroys." Paul placed his hand reassuringly on my shoulder, silently acknowledging my struggle. "Forgiveness begins within," he said, quietly. "You're finally allowing yourself that." Late that night, returning home through quiet streets, I felt an unfamiliar sensation tranquility, tentative but genuine. Stepping inside my apartment, I glanced around, the familiar emptiness, no longer oppressive. Photographs of David remained, but now they reminded me of happier times instead of painful loss. I walked to the window, gazing at the city lights glowing softly through the darkness. The heavy weight I had carried for months felt lighter, more manageable. Redemption was slow, uncertain, yet profoundly meaningful. My journey was far from complete, but it had begun. In seeking revenge, I lost everything, yet through responsibility, humility, and forgiveness, I found something far more valuable. A second chance at humanity, standing quietly in that gentle peace. I finally forgave myself,